All right, we now come to the Nishtana, where the child has to ask the four questions. The four questions encompass the four most obvious mitzvahs of the evening. This is probably the strangest halacha of the mitzvah of telling over the Exodus that has to be done in a question-answer form. That it's not just the kids ask, because if the Gemara says very clearly that if the child can't ask, so the wife asks the husband, even though she knows the whole story and she knows. And if she doesn't have a wife, so two people at Seder, one asks the other. If they're big sages and they know already ahead of time the answer to the question, still has to be done question-answer way. It sounds like in the Rambam Sefer HaMitzvos, it sounds like that if a man is at the Seder alone, he would ask himself the questions and give himself the answer. It has to be done question-answer. Why does it have to be done question-answer? Especially when two people that already know the answer, two Torah scholars, they have to ask these questions and get it as answers to these questions. Why does it have to be question-answer, especially if you know the answers ahead of time? Right. So God forbid to say it's some type of charade. There has to be a very real purpose in that, and we have to understand what the role of a question is. Right. Why can't we just let's say over the story of the Exodus, like telling a story without a question ahead of time? So as we've been saying already, right, for a few sessions, right, Seder night ushers in a new world order that's totally different from the world order that we know year-round. Let's take a look even at the words, the way the question is asked. The way the question is, Ma Nishtana Laila Zem, because how is this night different from all other nights? Right? There's something different about the night. We're not just asking any regular question. We're trying to focus that this night is different. Right? It's on a different track than all other nights, right? That this, even though we say something is different about something that's strange and something that's out of order, but over here, as we're saying, it's not a out of order; it's a different order. It's a higher order, but relative to the order that you're coming from, it looks very strange and deviant, and that's the initial reaction. And then you realize, hey, it's not a deviant. It's in the negative sense of the word. It is very different, but it's very different not because it's strange and shouldn't exist in the first place. It's different because it's a higher order, right? But the first acknowledgement is that it's different, and after you acknowledge that it's different, you come to the realization that it's not a freak; it's a higher order. But you have to understand that it's different. This is not a regular night with some added mitzvahs. This is a totally different night. On this night, we bring in a whole different order than the regular order that the human eye sees. The function of a question is to show that the way you understood until now no longer works. Right? It's actually the greatest cause of progress and changing of lines of thinking is to come up with a question. You realize that the way you thought until now just doesn't work past this point. You've come to an impasse. That's your question. Your question is when your thinking has come to an impasse, and that forces you to find another way. It forces you to change your thinking. Pesach night is not a regular night plus added mitzvahs. Pesach night is Leil HaSeder. It's a night of a new order, and we have to ask questions to show that the way things were done year-round has come to a stop. We've reached an impasse. And Seder night is different. Like the words of the question are, Ma Nishtana Laza, how's this night different? This night is different. It's on a different track. And that's why you have to ask questions. If we just say added information, without any questions, just talk about the Exodus, so you think that the story of the Exodus is just part of the regular mahalach of history, the regular way that history runs, just part of the regular way that the physical world runs, and here's just some added information you may have not been aware of. That's not what the Exodus is all about. It's about a different new world order. It's a whole different order. And the questions bring this out, that the old world order has stopped. It no longer continues. It's terminated. And what brings that realization to the mind is a question. This is also, we find, the whole oral law of the Torah, right, is all built in a question-answer form. The Talmud and the commentaries on the Talmud, they don't just supply information. Why wasn't the Talmud written in the same fashion like the Rambam? Just say added information. Because the Talmud asks questions as a way of forcing you to change your thinking. The Talmud is not a book of information. Right? The Talmud is a book of how to change our thinking to forever, with the power of the Talmudic dialectic, this question-answer technology. We can always change our thinking appropriately when we reach an impasse in our understanding of Torah, or an impasse of how to keep the Torah relevant to our times. So we have a whole system of question-answers of how to terminate a way of thinking and reach a new way of thinking. That's the power of the question-answer system of the Talmud, and we have to exercise that this night, because we have to break out of the mentality of the rest of the year, a mentality that comes from a world order that's adulterated with evil. We have to break out of it, not just physically, but we have to break out of it with our minds, and say that the old world order has reached an impasse. That's the function of the question. Right? The way you thought until now has come to an end. It doesn't work anymore. That way of seeing things and that way of handling things just doesn't work anymore. That's the function of the question. And then, because you have a question, you realize that the story of X is not added information superimposed on the mind that you had. It's a new order altogether. That's why it has to be done question and answer, even if you're sitting with yourself, to make you real the fact that this is totally different. Nishtana, this night is different. It's a different order, and the question forces you to realize that it is not a continuation of what was, just with some added mitzvot and some added information. It's a totally different order. That's what the question makes you realize.